Yes, thank you.
That's weird.
Thanks. Hi, everyone. This is Carol and George. I'm supposed to be assisting a host who'll be joining us in a minute. And I just thought we'd have an interlude with Greg playing some music. Does our co-founder, Lori Bennett, have any news about when our host will be here?
Yes, he thought it was 5, but so he was setting up and he will be with us in a minute. So let's start with our nibbles.
All right. So first of all, cheers and salute and all of those things that we say to each other. I'm having the champagne myself. Greg is going to have the mocktail and Sean will tell us how to put that together. The food is very just light. It's just supposed to be a snack, kind of tea snack. And so the idea is you might open with your nuts and olives and get your salty tooth going to make the drinks go down easier. And then you could move to the quiche and the asparagus. If you want to, you could put that in the microwave for 20 seconds just to bring it up to room temperature. And then as the time goes on, or maybe during the auction, you can make yourself the St. John's brand auction Earl Grey tea and have some of the beautiful Barbara Cadwallader cookies. This has been a collaborative effort. Barbara's daughter made the cookies and Lori Bennett made us the cookies based on the many years of cookies and all kinds of food provided by most of the Cadwalladers, but mostly Barbara. And I made the quiche Lorraine's because we remember Brian Marion so fondly. And all the times that he brought quiche Lorraine to the men's group, it seemed like he was always toting one of those in his bag. And we have gathered asparagus that is pulled into one another's, like we all hope to be during this evening in the auction and the festivities tonight. I made the mixed nuts because I figured St. John's is kind of a bag of mixed nuts, or isn't it? I mean, we're all kind of a little wacky in our own way, and so we all get to enjoy that mixed variety, which makes better than just one kind of nut. So we also have some unconsecrated grapes. We could have put the grapes on the altar today. We had a very nice service from John Dyer, and he did a wonderful job. We did not ask him to consecrate our auction coffee cocktail hour, though. And we have many drink choices. I'm sure you've all made your selection by now, but just because we had those drink selection choices, you don't have to be limited to that. Of course, if you prefer to get yourself a cup of coffee or just have sparkling water, or mix things as you choose, go ahead. So I think we'll be starting off once with the mixing of it once we see Sean in here. Lori, how do we know Sean?
So Sean Van Straatum is the mixologist who we know because he's the son of Siobhan Van Straatum, who's a very good friend of mine, and a lot of the people who are already on the screen are. We all went to the same elementary school, and if you are part of LNO, just wave your hand, because there we go. So my ladies' night was invited to this party, and Sean has many years as both a sommelier and a mixologist. He currently is the director of hospitality at a country club down in Southern California. And Siobhan has been the administrative administrator and bookkeeper at St. Cuthbert's for decades now. So there's a lot of connection to the Episcopal Church, and he's also a piano player. So it was interesting to have Greg start us off, since in many, many, many times I have heard Sean do what Greg was doing to begin with.
It was fun to think about
had,
what songs are both religious and secular.
There's music is its own spiritual value, so it can be just about
Absolutely.
anything. Sean just had his second baby, his wife had their second
Thank
baby.
God.
Yes, just July 26th, was it, you guys? No, August, it was in August. It was only like 2 weeks ago or less. So he's very graciously consenting to do this for us, because he has made a career out of this last year, talking about COVID, by running these mixology classes online for his country club patrons. And we've had a good time trying to line this up with him. And
I wanted to throw a shout out to the St. Cuthbert's Brotherhood in our deanery. I'm a member of the deanery, as you all know, and St. Cuthbert's has been told they will close. It's a real heartbreak for that community. It's a very strong community of about 10 families. And it is their concept that they will visit each church in a decent driving distance, each Episcopal church in a decent driving distance to their church, to decide which one to go to as a community. So I'm going to try to arrange through our deanery that they come to St. John's early, and I hope that we all eagerly welcome them. It's a sad thing to have a community close like that, but I hope they become members of our community, and I want them all to feel welcome when that happens.
I heard that one of the retired priests who goes to St. Cuthbert's, John Rollins, will be visiting us on September 19th. So I don't know if any of you have met John before, but he's been a supply priest and a parishioner at St. Cuthbert's for a long time now. In fact, he contacted our Judy Marr about donating jam to the auction. It was so they did make the announcement, and hopefully they will join us, or at least come to see us at St. John's and decide that we are a good landing spot.
We need to have a coffee hour that day. I kept wanting to call it a cocktail hour. Perhaps a cocktail hour at 11 in the morning might be a bit much to try to induce them to come, but it would be nice to give them a good welcome on that day.
It is for sure.
It's nice to see you, Scott Denman. I see you sitting there on your vacation, having much more fun than having to be standing in front of us for all morning, but I hope you're having a wonderful time on your vacation. So when we get to the auction part, Scott has a magic trick he's going to show us. So it's going to be a magic evening. You all have an envelope that came in your red box. Do not open it. Very important. Do not open it until Father Scott tells us we may. He's a very controlling individual, very controlling. Got to have it open when he says we can open it. But no one wants to spoil the trick for the evening anyway. And I'm sure it's sort of meaningless unless you open it when he tells you to. Otherwise, it's something that has no portent of any kind. And then, so at 5 o'clock, we'll have the auction start. We'll have the trick from Scott, then we'll have the auction start, and it'll be an online auction, which just has a highly convenient aspect of being able to, refresh yourself in the kitchen when you want to, and put your feet up and not have to dress up. So I'm hoping that it's a real successful evening. We make a lot of money. I still don't see Sean.
Well, then let me give a shout out to the committee that put together these appetizer kits that you're eating. Ken Fuller and Carolyn and Greg Slatoff, myself, Lisa Cadwallader, and we hope that you enjoy.
And Sylvia.
And Sylvia and the Morans, both of Jerry and Ann Meyer, all helped cook and put together these appetizer boxes for you all.
And if some of them are a little inconsistent, that's our fault. Because as we were assembling them, it became kind of a sea of red boxes and trying to sort out which ones had everything in it. So I hope they're all up to your liking and that you enjoy them. We're hoping that the alcohol will lubricate your voting or your auctioning fingers and cause you to hit that bid button one or two more times. Is this, Lori, this is the first time we've done an online auction, correct?
Completely online. In 2019, I believe in 2017, we had people go into Bidding Owl to buy seats and they could put in an advance bid, but everything then was transferred to paper.
Save those for when we have the guests closer to supper time.
Oh, hi. Some of you have your speaker on. And may I suggest, unless we turn it, and I'm happy to turn it into a discussion group, that we all mute ourselves, except Lori and I and Sean and John, and we'll try to make it one person at a time. Oh, I got it. Hold on. I got my husband over here has his speaker on, so hold on.
I am, so Bidding Owl will continue to receive your bids up until 5 o'clock tomorrow. We'll continue to make this announcement, but it is at 5 o'clock tomorrow that the bids will close. Some of the parties are already full, like the Victorian Christmas tea is fully subscribed. The hike up the Leona Canyon that I'm sponsoring, Lila and I are sponsoring, is filled. So if you thought about some of these parties, I think there were 3 spots left for the bunco, ladies bunco party. That's the most fun party I've ever attended at St. John's. I cannot believe how much fun that is. And so there are 3 spots left for that, and can get online and fill that. Take one of those. If you do, it's that's going to be November 6th. And then the Christmas sing-along. This will be the first time that this has ever happened, but on December 28th, there is Julie Nell is hosting in their big salon a Christmas sing-along during the 12 days of Christmas on Sylvia. That's December 28th, I believe.
Yeah, that's correct. It's on the 4th day of Christmas. And actually, it's being hosted by the sopranos of the choir, calling ourselves the 4 Calling Birds.
I like that.
But we asked Julie if we could use her house. It holds more people. And our idea was that everyone's crazy busy right before Christmas, but still in the mood after Christmas. But the concerts will be over and things, so we thought we could keep the joy make the joy last a little longer by putting it after Christmas.
All right.
I hope we get together in person.
Sean has joined us.
Great. Sean, can we welcome you, and maybe you can explain to us a little bit about what we're going to mix and drink. Although I have to admit, I did cheat and open my tiny bottle of champagne in advance because I wanted to make sure I'd have all the tools to do it. So anyway, thank you. And Sean, take it away.
Sure. Just one more second here. I'm just finalizing getting set up, and I'll take you on through that. I'm just getting my other camera set here. Sorry about a few technical difficulties.
So you have in your box the menu of what we're eating, but on the flip side is the menu of what we're drinking for those who have purchased boxes. And in addition to, and it also has a recipe for the Earl Grey syrup if you wanted to make the ginger beer spritzers at home. So he is, I am thinking also that for those of you who are going to be making the champagne cocktail, we put together these kits yesterday, and the dashes of bitters look like they may have evaporated a little bit. So you may want to reconstitute them with a couple of drops of water before Sean tells you what to do, because you might pour it and nothing would come out. But, other than that, we are looking forward to.
And I'm sure you know this, Sean, but your camera is not yet showing us wherever you are. Maybe
Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear
Can
you.
Unmute it?
It's unmuted, but no camera.
Okay, camera, and then flip it. So sorry, everybody. Hold on one second. All right, here we go. All right. Thank you so much for waiting. That was a long intro, so thank you so much, Carolyn and Lori, for starting me out here. We'll go through some of the kits, but before we start, my name is Sean Van Straatum. Currently, I'm the Assistant General Manager and Food and Beverage Director at Oakmont Country Club down in Los Angeles here. So thank you so much, St. John's, for inviting me and having me here today. So I'll walk you through a few of these kind of cocktails and mocktails. As mentioned, all of these can be modified without alcohol as well. But I just wanted to give some kind of cool stories behind some of these maybe classic or simple drinks. So we'll start out. The first one we're going to be doing is a classic gin and tonic. And you all have some fun stories to share about kind of why we're doing that. So I'll let you take on that a little bit later. The next one we'll go into is a classic champagne cocktail. And that one is going to be in the traditional kind of champagne method as well. And then last one, we're going to finish with a kind of fun mocktail for the summertime that we created. It's an Earl Grey and ginger spritzer. So let's get started. Any questions before we begin? Okay.
No questions.
So,
I just thought I would throw in that the gin and tonic is an homage to the Bowmans, who were very faithful to their gin and tonics, particularly around the 5 o'clock hour. And so we will remember them fondly when you're mixing them for us. Thank you.
Perfect. To the Bowmans. So first, we're going to start with just a nice kind of a rocks glass here, kind of a shorter glass, if you can see. We'll fill that up with ice. I always like to kind of fill it with ice, and then you can kind of stir in to make sure everything gets mixed properly. So we'll start that by putting a little bit of ice, and it's great that you have all the kits in front of you there. So hopefully collected some of the glassware and whatnot. If I'm going a little too fast or whatnot, you can slow me down. And then, so you all, I believe, have Tanqueray gin, but you can use any gin that has a good juniper base. I'll be actually using a fun one called Boodles here. It's on the other side. Oh, there we go. And this one has a little bit kind of juniper base, kind of more floral notes too. Any gin has to have juniper in the recipe, but then other than that, you can have any type of botanicals or different things in there. So for instance, if you're familiar with Hendrick's, they might do a little bit more cucumber. They'll put other botanicals and even lemon, lime peels into the gin as well. So we'll pour that on top. I think you have about 2 ounces there, so you can pour basically the whole bottle in there. And then we'll top it with just a bit of tonic. We'll give it a nice little stir here. And then if you have a lime kind of wedge to put on top, it does help with a little bit of the acidity. And I'll talk to you about kind of where this came from. So, and finishing it with that lime, we'll do a nice little stir. And while we enjoy this cocktail, I'll kind of talk to you about where it came from. So, and cheers. That's a nice, simple cocktail. So
Sean, can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Or unless
Yes,
you can
please.
talk about the history of tonic and the
Yeah.
gin and tonic. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so gin and tonic. So where did it come from and why do we do it now? So the British East India Company in India, they established this because about 1700s, they were trying to fight off malaria. And one ingredient that tonic actually has is quinine. And quinine at large amounts, they can actually help. Back then, they believed it could help cure malaria as well as prevent it. So what they would do is give a lot of their soldiers and kind of people over there quinine, but quinine is very kind of herbal, super bitter, kind of unpalatable. So what they did instead, they sweetened it, added water to it, a bit of lime, and actually gin. So essentially creating a gin and tonic to ward off malaria. So that kind of stuck around. It became later with the water becoming sparkling with carbonation being readily available and as a practice technique. And obviously the quinine has been lessened over time because it's so kind of aggressive of a flavor profile. But then even other parts of England would use this later on, maybe through the 18th and 20th centuries to actually cure diseases and things like that. They felt like it was a good digestif kind of after meals as well. So that's kind of the history and lineage. It really started as a medicine and now we just enjoy it as a fun cocktail. So enjoy. Cheers. Nice and refreshing. Great. Any questions on our gin and tonic for the Bowmans?
There is a question from Lori Bennett.
Yeah.
Where does gin come from? What's the history of gin?
So gin is, it comes from England, from the British Isles. The distillation process is the same as any other neutral grain spirit, like vodka, for instance. But juniper was thought of, and still is, as kind of a preservation method, because back then their distillation processes were not that clean. So if you're familiar with distillation of spirits, essentially you have what's called the head, the heart, and the tail. As it's passing through the distillation process, the kind of esters that are very harmful to you, that are very aggressive and not very tasty, kind of stem in the head and the tail. So you really want to cut out the heart. So what you'll do is start the distillation process, maybe run it for X amount of time, whatever you decide as the master distiller. And then you cut that off, you discard that head, remaining just taking the heart. And towards the end of the process, you're going to cut the tails. Now that was discovered over time, but up front, they never knew about that. So they would just distill it all in one. And it was very kind of harsh and harmful. And, you know, it didn't really have a recipe. So they were adding juniper and all these other botanicals to kind of mask and hide those kind of unsavory aromas. So that was typically done in kind of that United Kingdom part of the world. And then it kind of spread from there as kind of a great spirit. And they also thought some of those botanicals and whatnot were used as medicine. So a lot of these tinctures and various different alcohols that we consume today really came from the idea that it was good for you, or was trying to cure some type of ailment. Great question. Love that.
Have we lost Sean's visual?
Oh, can you see me now? Nope. Hold on one second. I don't know what's going on. Sorry about that. Let's see here.
I know I'd heard that the Benedictine monks were famous for their cordial that made everyone healthier. And I'm sure the Benedictine monks very happy. And I knew a Benedictine monk who was very happy when he drank it. So
there we go. Let's put that there.
There, we got you.
Okay, I'm back again. All right, great. So let's go into the next fun cocktail we have here. For those that you selected the champagne cocktail. So we're gonna mix all of these things right into the flute. You don't need any shakers, anything fancy like that. So to give you a little bit of history kind of behind the champagne cocktail, where it started, actually in 1861, in England, they were actually mourning the loss of Prince Albert. And they actually at Brooks Club Bar in London, they created this cocktail to kind of an homage of everyone's mourning, even when you're drinking champagne, which is typically celebratory, that should be mourning as well. So they actually mixed half champagne with Guinness to cover it kind of with a veil of blackness. And that's still called today Black Velvet. Now, instead of using champagne, they actually use cider, if you typically have that there. So all through the 20th century, that kind of idea of mixing champagne and not just having it on its own, but mixing it with other things became very popular. So this was featured in the Savoy book, the cocktail book that really kind of started a lot of these classic cocktails that we know today, like the Vesper or Manhattan. All of these kind of classic cocktails came from essentially that book. So what we're going to start, it's very simple ingredients here. All we're doing is putting sugar, something that's called Angostura bitters that's come from Trinidad. It's mixed with a ton of different herbs and botanicals. You don't need a lot. It's just a touch that gives it a little bit of flavor. And then you're going to top it with champagne and a twist. So let's go ahead. So first thing, you'll have like some type of sugar. You can use sugar cubes traditionally in the recipe. You can also just use a kind of a teaspoon of sugar itself or a sugar packet. But just to get it at the bottom of the glass there. And then you'll top it with some of those Angostura bitters as well. Just a little bit. And you want it to kind of dissolve into the champagne before you pour all of it. So once you have the bitters and the sugar at the bottom, you're going to pour just a touch of champagne and then stir it. So just a touch here, because you'll see the bubbles once they hit the sugar, they kind of erupt, and it becomes a little hard to fill it all the way to the top. So we'll stir it a little bit, and that's going to melt down the sugars and incorporate it into the champagne. And then as you start to fill it up, you'll see that it has this beautiful kind of orange tinge, orange color to it. And that definitely helps with kind of the presentation. Once that's stirred up just a touch, you're going to top it with a little bit more champagne. If you tilt the glass to the side, it always helps with the champagne not being too fizzy. And you can give it kind of a midway stir halfway up to get some of the bubbles down. Oh, my bubbles are going crazy. There we go. So this is a hard one, just like if you've ever poured mimosas or whatnot, that sugar reacts with the bubbles quite a bit, and you have to kind of go real slow or you'll have a little volcano on your hands, which you just saw me prevent there. So you can see it kind of going to the top there. And you'll see how that has a nice kind of orange tinge to it as you pour it. And then what it's topped with is just not so much the lemon juice, but more the rind of the lemon, because you want those nice oils to come out. What I like to do is just cut the kind of a zest off a lemon. You can express that onto kind of the outside of the glass, especially. And then you kind of just slip that right in there. Now, traditionally in the recipe, you can at this point top it with just a splash of cognac as well. We didn't decide to do that, but if you are making it again and replicating it, go ahead and try it with just a splash of cognac or brandy. It kind of kicks up the alcohol a little bit, rounds out the drink a bit. But here's your traditional champagne cocktail. Enjoy.
Thank you, Sean. Tell me, did
Welcome.
Queen Victoria, do we know, did Queen Victoria partake of the champagne cocktail? Was champagne an important feature in her daily diet?
That question's for me?
Yes.
I don't know exactly Queen Victoria, but I wouldn't put it past her.
Well, because she was Albert's wife,
yeah.
right? So she was Prince Albert was her husband. So I was wondering if it was invented particularly because she was fond of champagne, or we don't know that.
No, I don't know exactly that. That was definitely the first instance that's been recorded with just mixing any champagne with anything else. Up until that point, kind of in history, champagne was thought of as kind of its sole purpose was to be drank solo. So up until that point, they hadn't mixed too much together. So, I mean, with morning, who knows? She could have been indulging in a black velvet herself. So possibly.
I wonder what if we could have people either put in the chat box or unmute themselves and tell me what their favorite brand of champagne is. I'll start off Tattinger. I have very expensive taste. I only get it every 3-4 years, but give me a bottle of Tattinger. I know you really think highly of me. Anybody else have a favorite champagne?
I know, Veuve Clicquot.
Ooh.
Love Veuve.
Cristal.
That's a great one. Oh, that's some good taste there too.
I like Schramsberg.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, Schramsberg's great.
I just want to answer the question for you. Queen Victoria and Prince Albert were big fans of champagne prior to his death, and one of the reasons they chose the champagne cocktail was to honor their tradition of drinking champagne. So there you go.
I love that.
Thanks, Sylvia.
You're welcome. I've got a side thing going on here, so I can look these things up.
Yeah, you're my resident historian. Thank you.
And so I did have one other question about champagne.
Yeah.
That we call it sparkling wine here. Is it true that it used to be illegal to call it champagne in any place but the Champagne region?
Yeah, so not up until after Prohibition, actually. So up until then, champagne as a region and a brand was not necessarily a thing. But with the popularity, especially at the turn of the 20th century, when more and more people were drinking champagne, especially into the Roaring 20s, they actually wanted to brand it differently because they were making other sparkling wines from around the world, calling it champagne, but not using the traditional method where you'd actually do the second fermentation in the bottle to make the bubbles. They were doing it in big, large vats. So at that point, they said, we want to really define it as such. Now, if you look around, especially in California, you'll see on bottles of Corbel, for instance, it'll say California champagne. So there's kind of a little bit of a loophole, and it's a fun, cool story that this law was kind of put in place, and there's much more of a legal aspect to it, like a lawsuit in terms of branding, to call things champagne. But there was some grandfathered in things because at that time of that law taking place, that actually was prohibition in the United States. So they said, oh, they don't even have alcohol necessarily right now, so we're not going to really include them. So it's more so now it's kind of a faux pas of something that you just don't do out of respect. That if it's true champagne, you can only call it champagne from Champagne, France. Various other places do the same thing, especially like cognac. Anywhere else is going to be brandy, even if it's made in the same method. So a lot of producers will put, for instance, Stromberg is a great example. Method Champenois, they'll actually put at the bottom, showing that they are American sparkling wine by definition and name, but they're producing that sparkling wine in the traditional champagne method. So it's a kind of a fun legal kind of history and story.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah. Great questions. Love that. And love your choices in champagne. I'm coming to all of your houses if we're drinking that.
All right,
Especially the
Sean,
Cristal.
what is your favorite champagne?
My favorite champagne.
Or sparkling wine, depending on our past discussion just now.
Sure. Yeah. I truly do love champagne though. I had the honor of going to Champagne maybe 3 years ago now, and touring around different vineyards and things like that. So I have a number of really favorites. One that just blew me away was actually the one you mentioned, Carolyn, is Tattinger. I love that champagne. Love all of their different variations up to the Tête de Cuvée, which is their vintage Comte de Champagne. But a really fun, quick story was we went to a very small winery called Michel Gonnet. He doesn't produce all that much wine or champagne from the region, but we were going through in a tour and we see this little old man, like literally hunched over, walking out, and walks out the door and picks a grape and looks at something and comes back inside. And we're like, who's that guy? And they're like, oh, that's Michel Gonnet. So like, it just had such a true feeling of like, he's growing the grapes right there. His offices are inside. He's going outside just to check on the grapes. And it just had such a cool feeling of just that touch and feel that goes into it, the passion and the love that goes into something that he's been doing all his life and generations before him. So that was kind of a touching little glimpse into that winemaking process.
There is another sparkling wine in France called Cremo. And the saying is, a good Cremo is much better than a bad champagne.
Yep, that is very true.
And it is Tétanger, please, not Tattinger.
Tattinger.
Excuse me. I'm officially Zoom slapped.
Yeah. Tétanger. But look for Cremant. Try
Merci.
Cremant. It's good.
Yeah, my French is horrible. I'm not even
our beloved Keller Smith, our youth minister, says her favorite brand is the one anybody gives her. So, we all have a variety of favorites.
Yeah, definitely. And I would actually just recommend in making even a champagne cocktail or whatnot, it doesn't actually need to be the best champagne. The better it gets, the more I'm going to urge you to drink it on its own, nice and cold,
cocktail.
and don't mix it with anything. All the mixing and all that process has already been done for you, so it's good to go on its own. But a great Cremant, a great kind of entry-level champagne would be great for a true champagne cocktail. Great.
Thank you.
Awesome. If there's no other questions, I want to move right on into.
Oh, I did actually have one more question.
Yeah, go ahead.
I have had the same bottle of Angostura bitters that I inherited from my parents because I can't figure out what you can do with it besides champagne cocktails. Is there some other drink or is there some other food application besides champagne cocktails?
Absolutely. In food applications, you'd have to be a little creative for that. If you just try it on its own, it's actually not all that bitter. It's very aromatic, but you could even possibly whip it into like whipped cream or do it kind of a savory style dessert. This is literally called the salt and pepper of cocktails, meaning that you're not going to put it in every cocktail. It doesn't work like that with salt, but it is a flavoring, a seasoning that can really highlight especially brown liquor. So this is kind of a backbone spirit flavor enhancer to a Manhattan. You're going to put Angostura bitters in there. You'd also put Angostura in, let's say, old fashioned or any rum-based cocktail, like a deep, dark, aged rum cocktail. You might put some Angostura in there. There's a really cool drink called the Queen's Park Swizzle from Trinidad. And you're going to put aged rum at the bottom, and it's kind of crushed ice, and you use something called a swizzle stick. And as you're mixing the aged rum, you put a bit of simple syrup and lime. You're kind of going like this and getting it all mixed up. And then at the top, you do a heavy dousing of Angostura, so it has this really nice contrast in color. So mess around with it, play around with it. I don't know if it's like from generation to generation, if it'll hold up.
Yeah, good point. Good point. That's what I was
try.
going to ask. Will she get poisoned?
Yeah, no, nothing's going to happen to you. It is 40% alcohol. So if you look on here, it is the same as any rum, whiskey, vodka, gin might be. It's 40%. So it will last for a very long time, just like as long as extract in your kitchen may last, like vanilla extract or whatnot. I think over time, it will start to lose some of that vibrancy of aroma and flavor. So I would say you want to use it rather quickly. But yeah, if you hold on to it for 5-10 years, I mean, I've had my same bottle, my big bottle like this for maybe 5-6 years.
Your newborn will inherit it. Your newborn will inherit it.
Yeah, so my new daughter is going to get that for her wedding present.
And I now understand that there are different kinds of bitters, not just Angostura now. And someone had suggested that you could have it with sparkling water if you're not a drinker. I assume the alcohol would be so small that it wouldn't have an alcohol effect, but I guess that's one of the ways you could use it.
Absolutely. Yeah, Angostura has a very particular flavor profile, but there's tons of bitters, just like there are any extract. I mean, it's essentially made in the same way of kind of extracting some type of, lemon. There's orange bitters. There's chocolate bitters, Oaxacan chocolate bitter. And I would say there's 40 different types that I can basically speak to of seeing or using. Also, there's something called a tincture, which is essentially homemade bitters or homemade flavorings. So I had a really cool drink. It was called Tie Me Up. It was like kind of Thai flavors, and it had vodka infused with lemongrass, lime, coconut puree, and then I topped it with green curry tincture. So basically you take Everclear because it's 60%, so it's going to draw out a lot more. You can always dilute it towards the end once you've extracted as much as you need, but green curry and ginger and Thai basil, and it had this really intense aroma. So you only need a couple dashes on there, but essentially it's using that same process of making your own bitters. So that can be a lot of fun with bartending and whatnot. So you can kind of infuse anything.
Thank you. Also, if anybody wants to look in the chat, there's a list of all 8 appellations for sparkling wine from France from Kathy O'Ra, who, as we all know, lived on a winery in France, so she knows.
Very good. So that's my resident French expert. Thank you so much. We have so much talent on this call.
Okay, thank you.
Great, thank you so much. Great questions, and I like to make this as interactive as possible. So as I'm going along, just stop me, jump right in. I appreciate the kind of back and forth conversation. Makes it a lot more fun. So we'll get into our last one. And this one doesn't really have so much of a history or lineage, but I did want to create something that was non-alcoholic, still fun, different, and kind of zesty for kind of the summertime. I don't know how hot it is up there, but it's about 100 degrees down here. So we need something kind of fresh and refreshing. So as you saw there's a recipe guide for the Earl Grey simple syrup. So essentially what that is a concentrated tea syrup. So it's going to be sweet, and it's also going to be kind of really rich in flavor of the tea. I recommend if you're making it at home, really high quality loose leaf tea will be the best for extraction, and that will kind of really tie in those tea flavors as you go along. However, I made this one at home here. So, and I believe you have some in your kit there too, so you can use that. As we're going through, if you like things not so sweet, feel free to just put half and see how it goes. And you can always dump the rest in as we go along. before you get it too sweet and you're like, oh shoot, I shouldn't have done that. So you can add half the quantity if you'd like. So what you'll do is essentially, I'm just gonna kind of eyeball it here. You have everything pre-measured, so you don't have to do too much of that. But it's about 2 ounces at the bottom here. Like I said, you can put just 1 ounce if you'd like. And then we're gonna mix lemon juice as well. So 1 ounce of lemon juice. Essentially, you're making kind of a concentrated version of an Arnold Palmer in a way. But the main kind of difference, what we're gonna be doing is adding the ginger beer. So right here, we'll give it a stir just in an empty glass before the ice goes in. I just wanna make sure all the syrup and the lemon juice kind of come together. And then we'll add our ice into there. Okay. Once we have our ice in there, we're gonna top it with our ginger beer. And if you don't wanna have ginger beer, you can use soda water as well. Or what kind of Lori and Carolyn thought was a good idea is you can maybe do half and half. You could do half the ginger beer just to give it that kind of nice little bite to it. And then top it with soda water if you'd like. I like a lot of ginger, so I'm gonna fill it all with ginger. And the cool thing is if you're serving it, especially with the straw, you could actually leave it like that and it has a nice little contrast, kind of being dark at the bottom and light at the top. If not, give it a nice little stir so that it all comes together. Okay, there we go. And then if you like, if you wanted to top it with like a little lemon or flour, if you wanted to get kind of fancy, you can, but I'll just do a little bit of lemon, just like I did with the champagne cocktail. Always expressing those oils. As you smell the cocktail, you'll get, or mocktail in this case, you'll get that smell of lemon and makes it really fresh. That's our Earl Grey tea and ginger spritzer. Cheers. Very cool. So here's our made cocktails for today. So,
I have a question.
yeah, go ahead.
If you wanted to take that Earl Grey spritzer and make it alcoholic, what would your choice of, I'm sure it would be brown, alcohol be? Or maybe
So that
not.
would be,
Go,
Yeah.
Susie, good suggestion.
yeah. It's all about what you want to pull from it. So you're going to get a little bitterness from the tea, and that's where kind of the sugar kind of balances that out. But you do get kind of like a drying sensation from the tea. So you could go with the brown spirit. If you would do that, I would use something like a Spanish style, maybe rum, like a dark aged rum, not necessarily like an English spice rum, but make it a little bit more of that caramely flavor profile. That would tie in with that tea very well. But you could also make it a little bit more fresh and inviting. If you upped maybe the lemon a bit, you could even go vodka, maybe even gin, to make it a little bit lighter of a cocktail. So I think that would be your preference.
I was thinking bourbon or Irish whiskey.
I think you're gonna have to try all of them and find out.
I think so.
I give you the permission to do so.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. But yeah, that's the fun part about cocktails is that through and mocktails and whatnot, through the evolution of all of these drinks, they've really kind of come from one place, and each bartender, each kind of restaurateur has put their own spin on it and taken kind of a base and then built on it. So for instance, if you look at all of the sours, essentially it's like the mother sauces in cuisine. They all come from that same stem. So a daiquiri was the original to a margarita, but you're basically using a base spirit, something acidic like lemon or lime juice, and then something sweet like simple syrup or agave. So at that point, you can then go into a whiskey sour, which is essentially the same base. Now you're adding possibly egg whites if you like it like that, but you're using the same kind of recipe and you're extending from there. So that being said, if you wanted to add alcohol to that last drink, play with it. You know, try it one way, see with the dark liquor, and maybe that doesn't work. Maybe go with something lighter, and see where it kind of favors for you. But essentially, it's a ginger Arnold Palmer, if you want to say it simply. But from there, you can really kind of tweak and change things. So it makes it a lot of fun.
Sean, what is the history? Well, I had heard that the literally the name for cocktail comes from them using a male chicken, rooster's tail feather as the stir. Do you know anything about the history of the name cocktail?
No, I haven't read up too much on actually the cocktail etymology of the name so much. That's something I'll have to look into. But that would be a cool kind of interesting story. I know too much about the cocktails themselves, and maybe not about the name.
Where did the first cocktail come from? How was the first cocktail created? Was it champagne cocktail?
Not necessarily. It depends on kind of which cocktail you go back to, because at that same time period, maybe a little bit later, the old fashioned was created in the United States. And I think people have always been mixing spirits. I mean, spirits go back to almost the 5th, 6th century, where they started to figure out the process of distillation. Obviously, they were making wine far before then, but that process of distillation, there was a lot of disasters in creating that. But alcohol itself was created actually in the Middle East, and were predominantly used to for cosmetics and for applications and kind of sanitation, but rarely was drank at that time until a couple centuries later, where people started to consume it. And obviously, you have to consume it at a lower percentage than a foolproof alcohol would be. But I would say then there was aging process that came later. So once I, as kind of a origin, created various different types of liquors from various different types of products, from wheat to sugar cane to barley, all these different types. That's when we started to see, okay, what if we mix some things together? So I don't know if there was actually an official first cocktail, but the first recorded cocktail book wasn't until about 1920. It was the Savoy cocktail book. And that basically documented a lot of these cocktails that people had been making all around the world, and especially in Europe, that didn't really have names or kind of histories, but they wanted to start putting it to make it a little bit more formal.
Thank you. In our chat box, everyone, is a reference to an online site that has lots and lots of recipes, it looks like, for cocktails if you're interested. And every cocktail could be a mocktail for those of you who don't drink.
Sean, what is your country club preparing that's kind of unique to it, that's popular?
Yeah, so what we were able to do kind of all through 2020 is we all were, and still not meeting necessarily like we were pre-pandemic. I started this cocktail class series, which kind of gave light to what we're doing tonight. And we would make all these cocktails at home. So we built the kits and we do all of that fun stuff so that they could actually have a really well-made, cool cocktail at home. So we did about 6, 7 classes, and each time we'd make about 3 or 4 cocktails. So at the end of that, as we started getting back in person and eating outside and things like that, they said, we want those cocktails that we made in that class. So we have some really fun ones. So for instance, the Thai kind of coconut lime cocktail that I mentioned, that went on the menu. One that was ridiculously popular pretty much all summer long, and we brought it back this summer, was a pomegranate margarita. So it sounds really simple, but what I like to do is not use anything kind of fabricated or fake. We just want to use really high quality, fresh ingredients. So what we did is we make our own grenadine. So it's 2 parts pomegranate juice, 1 part sugar, and then you put lemon and orange peels into the liquid as it's coming up to a boil. Just boil for just maybe 30 seconds and then let it steep. It creates this really kind of rich, dark red grenadine. And it's kind of homemade grenadine, no red food dye or anything like that. So that gives it that pomegranate flavor, kind of heightened. And so it's just that with a brown sugar and salt rim. So you get kind of a sweet and salty aspect. And then essentially it's a traditional kind of margarita from there. But that was, and then we put a few kind of pomegranate seeds on top. And that was just flying off the shelves. That was one of the most popular drinks. So just maybe like putting a couple small twists on the classics, I think make it fun and kind of reinvent what they already know.
What would you charge for that?
Sorry.
What did you charge for that?
Oh, I mean, it's a country club, so it's like $12. And it's like 3 ounces of tequila, so they're getting
Everything
their
is
money's
12
worth.
bucks.
Everything's
Everything is
$12.
I have a note here from our online researcher, Sylvia Sykes, saying that cocktail is the Americanization of the French word. I'll get busted by Kathy O'Brahu of cocktail, a term for a mixed drink, which means egg cup. Kathy O'Brahu also says there are 3 theories of the origin of the word egg cup cocktail. The Dregs theory, cocktailings, and the docked horse theory, a cocktail. Just interesting that everyone has an origin of the name. Who knows? Who knows?
Well, it's not too far off from the cocktails themselves, which are really kind of hard to figure out where they first came from, because most of it comes from stories or legends, or who created what, what bartender created this at what restaurant did they work at. So it's not too far off from the drinks themselves. But thanks for that.
I would suggest a discussion topic for everyone. I'm a big fan of pairing foods and wine. And with my favorite food with champagne is something that not most people think of, but homemade popcorn with truffle salt. It is the most indulgent, wonderful snack on earth. Does anybody else have a perfect pairing?
I'm coming over for a movie.
Okay.
Me too.
Truffle popcorn, truffle oil popcorn.
No, it's truffle salt. You make the popcorn the normal way, and then you put truffle. I mean, not out of a bag, but out of a pot with oil, and you make your own popcorn, and then you sprinkle truffle salt on top. It's really, I know it sounds ridiculously hoity-toity, but you get truffle salt at Safeway. The bottle lasts you for a couple of months, unlike my Angostura bitters, which last a couple decades. And
That's great.
Wow.
Add
I
a
would say
French
one of-
movie and we're in.
One of my favorite pairings is very similar to that salty and kind of acidic, would be just kind of salt and pepper, kettle chips, nothing too crazy, but that nice kind of crunch with vintage champagne. It's like the best. It's so, there's a kind of a bit of a dichotomy of that, like kind of just low class kind of chips with something really high end and well put together. It just, you don't need caviar and all this kind of crazy stuff. It just really pairs perfect. You have that saltiness and then the nice bubble with the pop of acidity. It goes perfect together.
Linda, you had one?
Yeah, I had something to say. Jacqueline Kennedy Onassis, when she was in her early 60s, before she passed at 64, her favorite meal was a glass of champagne. She'd order this out. A glass of champagne, a baked potato with caviar on it. I'd go for really good butter myself, but
that sounds delicious to me. I'd go for
yeah, me too.
Warren Wong says Hawaiian popcorn. Warren, what's Hawaiian popcorn? Is he going to pop on? He's not going to, it's called Hawaiian hurricane popcorn. I don't know what that means. I'd love to hear from him, but I look forward to a further description of that yummy snack. I mean, I don't think that it has to be highbrow. I think that's one of the things that's kind of fun to take an upscale thing with a less upscale thing. I think the best steak I ever had was at the, what's it called? In Welton. Okay. Never mind.
It shall remain a
hitching post.
secret.
The hitching post where they, raise their own beef and they make their own wine. And there's something about that combination of steak and a glass of red wine that is traditional, but it's better than anywhere else because it is it's on a farm, it's on a ranch, and it was just perfectly made.
Nice. Excellent.
Great.
This was fun.
So Susie Tyndall says, I'd like to remind you all about Tatendier's fine chateau in the Carneros domain. Oh, in Carneros, I assume in Sonoma County, domain Carneros. I actually did not realize that they had their own.
That's Tétanger to all of you. And it is in Carneros, and it is this beautiful chateau, and you can sit out on their beautiful terrace. And we ran into Susie and her family there when we were visiting with family. And so, but it's not too far removed from the real thing.
And cheaper to get to.
A little bit.
Yeah.
It's right there.
Not
It's
many
right there.
hours. Nice.
So Warren Wong says that it has his Hawaiian hurricane popcorn has unami flavored snacks and buttery coating that you put in a bag and shake in the ingredients after popping the popcorn. Oh, we're gonna all have to go down to the market and get that, whatever it is. Sounds great.
Thank
I'm sorry,
you.
Laura.
I'd never think of champagne and popcorn, but all of these pairings are all champagne and most of them, except the baked potato and caviar, which
It's over the top.
I have to put a word in for my favorite, which is Moet Chandon
Moet
White
Chandon.
Star.
Yeah, it's great.
That's my favorite champagne.
And you're loyal to California, which I appreciate.
Actually, that's French.
Oh, sorry. Because there's a Moet.
Chandon is the California subsidiary of Moet, which is the French side. And I can't be loyal to California when it comes to champagne. I'm sorry.
Sarah,
I
help
will
us.
drink it happily.
Moet or more?
Moet et Chandon, it is Moet.
Moet
Okay.
et Chandon. I
Yeah, you
know because
almost
I
never say that
mixed my
final
cat.
I get confused.
You all can't get away unless you get some shout out for Iron Horse cellars up in West County. It's a favorite of Barack Obama. It was featured at the White House throughout his term.
And it's a
Nice.
beautiful little tasting room too.
Oh yeah, great. It's right around the corner from where we live.
So you can walk home if you had more than one glass.
No, roll. We'd roll home.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it's up on a hill, so you roll back.
We're getting a notice here that from John Owens, our Zoom host, that at 5 o'clock sharp, we need to turn it over to our magician in charge, Scott Denman. This has been a really wonderful event. I want to thank you, Sean, for educating us and sharing our enthusiasm for our community and furthering our interests in culinary pursuits. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate the opportunity. And this is a lot of fun for me, so I don't mind doing it. So
When you
thanks
get a
for
job in
including me in
Northern,
the program.
when you get a job in Northern California, could you let us know where you are so we'll come over to that and get our pomegranate drink?
Yeah, your pomegranate margarita will be waiting. You got it.
Great.
Thank you
so
all.
much.
Appreciate it.
Thanks. John, we are turning it over to you.
All right, thank you very much.
We don't have your face. I don't know where you are. There we are. No, or we have.